thank the members for their interest and support for the bill. Please allow me to address their comments on the MHA-related amendments. Ms. Joan Pereira and Ms. Yeo Wan Ling asked about the regulatory and enforcement approach for foreign-registered heavy vehicles vis-à-vis Singapore-registered heavy vehicles. Speed limiters are employed upstream to reduce the speeding risk before the offence occurs. In 2024, the speed limiter regime was expanded to include lorries with a maximum laden weight of between 3,501 kilograms and 12,000 kilograms. Singapore-registered heavy vehicles account for the bulk of heavy vehicle traffic on our roads. Installing speed limiters for these vehicles would therefore reduce the road safety risks associated with heavy vehicles very significantly. We also recognize the need to address the safety risks associated with foreign-registered heavy vehicles. We require them to comply with our road traffic laws and regulations, and we conduct on-road enforcement on them. Foreign vehicles that commit speeding offences will be dealt with in accordance with the law. We do not require them to install speed limiters because they also apply in other jurisdictions with different speed limits from Singapore. It is worth noting that since Singapore-registered lorries are already required to install speed limiters and therefore will be unable to speed, this allows traffic police to focus speeding enforcement on all other vehicles on our roads, including foreign-registered heavy vehicles. To Ms. Joan Pereira's question on installing speed limiters for higher-risk passenger cars, speed limiters are currently required for heavy vehicles as part of a targeted, risk-based approach. These vehicles pose higher risks due to their size, weight, and operating characteristics. But the risks associated with passenger cars, on the other hand, arise primarily from driver behavior rather than vehicle attributes. These behaviors are more appropriately addressed through public education efforts and deterrent penalties rather than through speed limiters. Members also asked about speed limits for heavy vehicles. Ms. Yeo Wan Ling asked whether the speed differential between passenger vehicles and heavy vehicles gives rise to unsafe driving conditions. Ms. Valerie Lee suggested that lighter vehicles with a maximum laden weight of 3,501 to 5,000 kilograms should be subject to a higher speed limit of 70 kilometers per hour instead of the current 60. Let me clarify. On expressways, passenger vehicles may travel at speeds of up to 90 kilometers per hour, while heavy vehicles are subject to a vehicular speed limit of 60 kilometers per hour enforced through speed limiters. But these differing limits should not be seen in isolation. They are paired with lane discipline requirements, where slower vehicles are required to keep to the left lane, except when overtaking. The rationale for this framework is road safety. Heavy vehicles differ from passenger vehicles in terms of mass, braking distance, stability, and blind spots, and when accidents occur, they can cause disproportionate harm. Speed control is therefore a critical safety lever to reduce the risk and severity of accidents involving such vehicles. To Ms. Valerie Lee's suggestion, vehicles with a maximum laden weight of between 3,501 to 5,000 kilograms are subject to the same 60 kilometers per hour speed limit as vehicles above 5,000 kilograms because they pose similar road safety risks, such as longer braking distances and reduced maneuverability at higher speed. Sir, we are starting to see results from our policy. The number of speeding-related accidents, including fatal ones, involving heavy vehicles has decreased by 28%, from 25 cases in 2024 to 18 cases in 2025, as more lorries installed speed limiters last year. We expect these figures to further decrease after all lorries install speed limiters by the 1st of July 2027. We also recognize that good lane discipline is essential where there are differences in vehicle speeds. The traffic police will continue to educate motorists on the importance of maintaining lane discipline and enforce against violations. Ms. Yeo Wan Ling, Ms. Valerie Lee, and Dr. Chu Pei Ling asked questions about the compliance burden on businesses and whether assistance is being provided to businesses to facilitate the installation of speed limiters. To Ms. Yeo's query, the speed limiter requirement applies to lorries that continue to operate on Singapore roads. Where a vehicle is earmarked to be scrapped after its statutory installation deadline, the vehicle must be installed with a speed limiter in order to operate on the roads after the deadline. While I appreciate Ms. Yeo's suggestion to exercise flexibility for those with firm scrapping plans, we will have to draw the line somewhere, and there will always be lorries which are intended to be scrapped after the deadline. We have thus decided to maintain a consistent approach by not extending the deadline for any group. Lorry owners have been given adequate lead time to plan their installation decisions in accordance with their business and operational needs. On assistance provided to businesses in this first phase of speed limiter installation, 94% of the lorries that needed to install by 1st January 2026, or about 2,300 lorries, had completed their installation before the deadline. To support small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, Enterprise SG has expanded their productivity solutions grant to support, To support SMEs, Enterprise SG has expanded productivity solutions grant support to cover speed limiters for eligible SMEs that install between 1st of October 2025 and 31st of March 2027. This recognizes that speed limiters can also indirectly improve productivity by reducing downtime in the event of accidents. Beyond this, the Traffic Police has introduced UN ECE R89 as a third approved speed limiter standard. This expands the variety of approved speed limiters available in the market and provides more options for lorry owners looking to install speed limiters. The Traffic Police has also worked with the industry to significantly increase installation capacity, expanding the number of authorized agents more than sixfold since January 2025 to 70 currently. The industry has also been offering on-site installation and bulk discounts to encourage installation. Turning to the other proposals in the bill, Mr. Jackson Lam asked how fairness and public trust would be maintained in the context of increasingly automated enforcement systems. Ms. Sylvia Lim asked for details about the outsourcing arrangement to private sector companies. Let me first clarify that clauses 74 and 79 of the bill only allows for the administrative processing of straightforward violations to be carried out by authorized civilians after an offense has been detected. These amendments do not involve the automation of enforcement decisions. They also do not change the current process for appeals, including the viewing of camera footage upon request, which will continue to be managed by Traffic Police. These authorized civilians will assess traffic camera footage to determine if a traffic violation has been disclosed. This is based on an assessment framework provided by Traffic Police. For example, for footage captured by red light cameras, these civilians will view a series of photos to confirm that the vehicle had crossed the stop line after the traffic light had turned red. In short, the authorized civilians will not exercise enforcement discretion. The Traffic Police will continue to be responsible and accountable for enforcement policy and decisions. We are working out the procurement details and approach. That said, we agree with the member that any use of automation or outsourcing must be subject to robust safeguards and oversight to ensure fairness and public confidence in traffic enforcement. Finally, we thank Dr. Hamid Razak for his support for measures to enhance road safety. Let me address Dr. Hamid's suggestion to raise penalties and demonstrate stronger deterrence for dangerous and careless driving offences. The Ministry fully agrees with the need for adequate deterrence and appropriate punishment commensurate with the culpability of the offender and the harm caused through the offending act. The maximum penalties set out in the Road Traffic Act reflect this calibrated approach. Building on this, MHA is working with the Sentencing Advisory Panel, chaired by Justice Tae Yong Kwang, to publish sentencing guidelines for the offences of dangerous and careless driving. The Ministry is studying further measures to shape responsible driving behaviour and improve overall road safety. Further details will be announced when ready. I thank members for supporting the bill. Mr. Speaker, I seek to move and will now hand over to the office holders from the Ministry of Transport to address amendments that are related to MOT.
MOS, Baey Yam Keng.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the members for their support of the bill and their thoughtful questions. Let me first address the specific points that members raised. At the onset, I wish to make clear that we are not banning the use of mobility scooters, but safeguarding them for those who truly need them. Our intention is not to target any specific group, but to set ground rules that provide clarity and keep our paths safe and safer for all. Several members like Ms. Joan Pereira, Ms. Chu Pei Ling, and Dr. Haresh Singharaju spoke about how medical needs will be assessed to allow for the use of mobility scooters. We will need the support of our doctors and occupational therapists or OTs to assess the medical needs to determine whether a person's medical conditions leads to mobility challenges that require a mobility scooter. MOH has issued guidelines for healthcare professionals to conduct the assessment, including a non-exhaustive list of possible conditions. Some examples include cardiovascular diseases such as severe heart failure and musculoskeletal disorders such as muscular dystrophies and rheumatoid arthritis. Members including Mr. David Ho, Mr. Ng Si Xuan, and Dr. Hamid Razak asked about the process to obtain a certificate of medical need, validity periods, and timelines. For the convenience of users and assessors, both digital and hard copy certificates will be possible. The doctor or OT may fill in a standard online form to submit the data to LTA or issue a hard copy of the standard form. Once the assessor completes the form, the certificate is granted. For the hard copy, the user is encouraged to take a photo and submit it to LTA so that it is stored in LTA's digital registry. As part of the certification, the doctor or OT will assess and indicate if the user's need for mobility scooter is long-term or temporary. For the latter, the period that the certificate is valid will be specified. The government will maintain a registry of those with valid certificates of medical need and those exempted from the requirement. Seniors exempted on the basis of age will not be in the registry. I know some seniors may look younger than their age, so if enforcement officers were to ask, the NRIC year of birth just needs to show that they are 70 years old and above. As an example, for this year, everyone born in and before 1956 are automatically exempted. Enforcement officers will request for the user's particulars to perform a back-end check on the spot. If the certificate has not been submitted online, the user just needs to produce a hard copy form for inspection. Individuals can also check their certification or exemption status on LTA's One Motoring website. Dr. Chu Pei Ling asked whether physiotherapists can grant the certificate of medical need. We have worked with MOH to determine the groups of assessors for the certificate. Currently, mobility assessment, device prescription, and user training are not part of the routine training of a general physiotherapist. Hence, MOH position is that only doctors and OTs can assess and grant this certificate. MOH will continue to monitor demand if these competencies should be built into training for a wider pool of healthcare professionals. Members, including Mr. Jackson Lam and Mr. Ip Hong Weng, reminded us to streamline processes to minimize the burden on genuine users, particularly persons with disabilities and seniors. We fully agree. Risk-managed exemptions include seniors aged 70 and above, those who have already obtained government-subsidized mobility scooters, and those who have applied for MOH disability schemes to help with activities of daily living ADL needs in mobility and/or transferring. We are working to exempt more user groups with other relevant assessments where possible, such as applicants for other disability schemes. Members, including Ms. Yeo Wan Ling, Mr. Wan Riza, and Ms. Lee Hui Ying, also asked about the cost to undergo the assessment for mobility scooter. If polyclinics will offer the AMS and if subsidies will be extended. For those who need certification, we have engaged the healthcare sector to encourage private GP clinics to offer the AMS. We want it to be widely available and accessible so that users can have affordable choices. As Dr. Haresh Singaraju has emphasized, we encourage users to go to their regular doctor or regular OT who already understand the medical history to streamline the assessment process. All doctors, including polyclinic doctors, are allowed to conduct the AMS. However, doctors may decline to assess users who are not their regular patients, depending on the doctor's comfort level to conduct the certification. Healthcare subsidies would not be accorded for visits made solely to obtain the certificate of medical need. However, as long as the patient is seeking healthcare services from a doctor or OT at public healthcare institutions or community care organizations, and the AMS is conducted as a clinically indicated part of their regular medical care, the overall care episode, including the AMS, can be given healthcare subsidies. Members, including Mr. Chai Ying-zhou, Mr. Dennis Tan, and Mr. David Ho, asked about specific plans to engage existing PMA users on the new rules, especially seniors and persons with disabilities. LTA will continue to work with the Agency for Integrated Care and SG Enable, as well as relevant social service agencies such as SPD, to reach out to seniors and persons with disabilities. LTA's public communications campaign on the new rules will also be rolled out in various languages. On the ground, enforcement officers will engage and educate PMA users on the upcoming rules. We will also reach out through grassroots channels, and I seek members' support to raise awareness among your residents. Members, including Ms. Yeo Wan Ling and Ms. Joan Perella, raised concerns on how the new PMA rules may affect platform delivery workers. We understand the concern on how the new rules could potentially affect the number of deliveries and thus the earnings of delivery workers. Only workers with mobility needs should use PMAs for their work. Such workers have to abide by the reduced speed limit and dimension limits for everyone's safety. This protects not just other path users, but the PMA riders themselves. By going at a slower speed and using devices that are not oversized, they can navigate crowded paths and complete their deliveries safely. They reduce the risk of serious accidents which will affect their earning stability. I thank Ms. Yeo Wan Ling for sharing that the National Delivery Champions Association will provide financial assistance to help riders comply with the new rules. For delivery riders without mobility challenges, PMAs are not the right mode of transport for them. They should not misuse PMAs. They can continue their trade by switching to other devices or vehicles before 1st June 2026. We had engaged the Digital Platforms Industry Association and the National Delivery Champions Association last year. They expressed support for the new PMA rules, including the 6 km/h speed limit, in a joint statement. The platforms have committed to be inclusive in allocating jobs and providing earning opportunities for individuals from diverse backgrounds, including those with mobility challenges who rely on PMA for their delivery work. Ms. Goh Zi Ki and Mr. Ip Hong Weng also asked about platforms incentivizing faster deliveries that may lead to speeding. Platform companies are responsible for ensuring the safety and well-being of their delivery riders. This includes ensuring that the riders using active mobility devices on public paths have adequate third-party liability insurance coverage during the course of their work. We will continue to encourage food delivery platforms, rider associations, and industry partners to promote safe riding practices and explore what more can be done to deter errant riding behavior. LTA and the traffic police have also conducted campaigns such as Be Safe, Be Seen to promote safer riding habits with Grab, and safety talks and training sessions for delivery riders with Food Panda. Mr. David Ho raised a concern that the reduced speed limit could affect riders' ability to travel upslope. Indeed, this was a concern that we had when developing the proposal, so we spent some time studying the issue. So our studies support the calculations done by Mr. Ho's volunteers that motorized PMAs will be able to travel upslope along public paths safely with a speed limit of 6 km an hour. It is the motor power and not the speed that pushes the wheels upslope. So nonetheless, we understand the worries, and LTA will improve awareness to reassure PMA users that 6 km per hour is safe. Ms. He Ting-Ru asked whether scientific literature was considered for AMAP's or the Active Mobility Advisory Panel's recommendation of the speed limit reduction. Ms. Yeo Wan Ling, Mr. Dennis Tan, Ms. Fadil Haswizi, Mr. Chai Ying-zhou raised concerns that the lower speed limit will increase journey times and affect delivery riders' earnings. In accepting the recommendation to lower the speed limit to 6 km per hour, our primary consideration was to peg the speed to brisk walking speed, since PMAs are a replacement for walking. We acknowledge that the trade-off is that users travel more slowly. This is necessary to protect themselves and other path users. So I thank Mr. Fu Zhexiang for citing the many jurisdictions internationally that use 6 km an hour as a speed limit for PMAs based on brisk walking speed. On Ms. He Ting-Ru's suggestion, the AMAP already comprises stakeholders across various interests and professional groups, as well as academics. Ms. He Ting-Ru and Mr. Chai Ying-zhou asked if users would have sufficient time to comply with the new rules that will come into effect on 1st June 2026. Mr. Speaker, it will almost be 2 years since the proposals were announced in March 2024, and we have received strong calls to implement the rules swiftly to improve path safety. Affected stakeholders, including retailers and users, have had time to change to compliant devices before the PMA rules commence on 1st June 2026. But we will provide more time until 1st January 2029 for existing mobility scooter users to register their devices and change to devices that comply with the new maximum device speed of 6 km per hour. Mr. Fu Zhexiang and Mr. Ip Hong Wing asked about the cost of registration and how mobility scooters can be transferred or sold. Retailers need to register the devices to their business before sale or ensure that the device is registered. Ahead of 1st June 2026, LTA will work with retailers to register the existing stock of compliant mobility scooters. Before the sale of the mobility scooter, retailers will check via One Motoring website to ensure that the prospective owner is either granted a certificate of medical need or exempted from the requirement. The sale should only be completed upon the successful transfer of ownership. We will be mindful that the cost of registration should be kept affordable so as not to place an undue burden on genuine users. As a comparison, the current cost of registering power-assisted bicycles is $50. Dr. Hamid Razak suggested for markers to visibly identify those with medical need for mobility scooters for ease of enforcement. On the other hand, Mr. Fu Zhexiang asked if registration and identification marks raise privacy concerns. We appreciate these concerns and we assure members that the registration and enforcement processes be handled sensitively. The registration system addresses both concerns. Registration and identification marks will display the device's unique identification number rather than personal details of the owner, similar to e-scooters where it is a sticker. In addition, as a general rule, only individuals granted a certificate of medical need or exempted from the requirement can register mobility scooters. The registration framework will allow families to share a single mobility scooter. Registration is for the mobility scooter to ensure device compliance. It is not an offense to ride a mobility scooter that is registered to another person as long as the user is granted a certificate of medical need or exempted. This is no different from how vehicles can be driven by multiple drivers as long as each driver has a valid driving license and the vehicle is insured accordingly. Several members, including Ms. Ting Pei Ling, Ms. Joan Pereira, Mr. Dennis Tan, and Mr. David Ho, raised suggestions to strengthen enforcement of the new PMA rules, including expanding the use of cameras, increasing plainclothes operations, and action against non-compliant devices. Say again, and action against non-compliant retailers. To enforce the PMA rules, LTA has a comprehensive strategy. Active mobility enforcement officers will patrol public paths and conduct checks on user and device compliance. They will be supported by volunteer active mobility community ambassadors to enhance engagement efforts. Ms. Herting Rue also expressed concern that enforcement officers will rely on casual visual perception of able-bodiedness. Enforcement officers will be trained to be sensitive in checking for the certificate of medical need. Public tip-offs on errant users are gathered through LTA's website and social media today, as members such as Ms. Poli San and Mr. Ng Si Xuan, Mr. Chai Ying-zhou have suggested. These complement other data sources to identify offense hotspots for targeted enforcement deployments. CCTVs focused on paths are already deployed island-wide to detect and deter offences such as speeding. Some of the CCTVs are deployed permanently, while others are deployed on a roving basis to allow us to respond quickly as new hotspots emerge. In addition to ground enforcement, LTA conducts targeted operations against retailers who display or sell non-compliant and unregistered devices or offer illegal modification services. Non-compliant devices are seized and enforcement actions taken against offenders. But we must acknowledge that no matter how many boots we put on the ground, enforcement officers cannot be everywhere. Neither is it desirable to foster a culture where correct behavior is dependent only on enforcement and penalties. It is better to also focus on education and awareness. That is why LTA works with the community through active mobility community ambassadors to promote awareness of active mobility rules. Members such as Ms. Goh Ziki, Ms. Silver Lim, and Ms. Valerie Lee asked about enforcement against unsafe devices. LTA will act on feedback received via official channels and social media, surveillance, as well as day-to-day operations. Targeted enforcement checks will also be conducted where e-scooters are commonly used, including areas where such devices may be parked or kept. PMDs verified by LTA as non-UL 2272 certified will be seized. LTA has the responsibility to enforce against such devices. As Ms. Silver Lim has acknowledged, LTA already conducts enforcement operations at residential areas to seize non-compliant active mobility devices and will continue to do so working with our partners. This bill will allow us to go further. LTA can go beyond seizing the non-compliant device. The individual can also be prosecuted for the offence of keeping the unsafe device. This provides a stronger deterrent against fire hazards. Mr. Chai Ying-zhou and Ms. Poli San asked about the disposal process for non-compliant devices. If needed, owners may utilize designated e-waste recyclers or collection drives organized by ALBA in collaboration with town councils. I thank Dr. Wan Riza and Ms. Ting Pei Ling who expressed support for the new offence of keeping unsafe devices. They urge users to check that their devices meet safety standards and dispose of unsafe devices to keep their communities safe. For PMAs, we may not expect to see a large-scale wave of disposals. To meet the new maximum device speed limit, many existing devices can simply be adjusted. Those who do not qualify for a certificate of medical need can resell their devices provided they are compliant. Disposal will likely to be limited to oversized units or devices that cannot be brought into compliance, such as those with more than one seat, which are considered PMDs, which have their own set of requirements. Beyond the provisions in this bill, members have asked about other measures to reduce the fire risk of active mobility devices. I'll touch on this briefly as we plan to address some of these issues in a subsequent bill later this year. Dr. Hamid Razak asked for national guidelines for safe charging. Mr. Chai Ing-zhou suggested periodic inspections for PMAs in the absence of a mandated safety standard. While we continue to monitor the development of international standards for PMAs, LTA and SCDF will remind the public on safe charging and usage practices when using motorized active mobility devices and against using modified second-hand devices and non-original parts. Today, periodic inspections are required for e-scooters to check that they remain compliant with the UL 2272 standard and have not been illegally modified. The benefits of mandating periodic inspections for PMAs solely to check dimensions and speed limits must be weighed against the burden on users. Dr. Chu Pei-ling and Mr. Chai Ing-zhou asked how online marketplaces can take responsibility to eliminate unsafe and non-compliant devices. Mr. Hong Wing suggested making it an offense for a reseller to mislabel a device as compliant. Since we commenced the Active Mobility Act, the sale of active mobility devices and related services are now more common online. LTA actively works with major e-commerce platforms like Carousel, Lazada, and Shopee to take down listings of non-compliant devices. We'll look at how we can strengthen rules for online sales and advertising in our legislation. Mr. Speaker, I thank members for the many suggestions and clarifications raised. Due to time constraints, I have not addressed them all, but we will certainly study the points raised and continue to review how we implement the new laws in the bill, as well as new measures needed. The proposals before us today represent more than new laws. We want to restore the original purpose of PMAs and ensure that they serve those that they are truly intended for and protect all path users at the same time. With the certificate of medical need, we distinguish genuine users from those who misuse mobility scooters. Through registration of mobility scooters, we create accountability and ensure users purchase compliant devices. By making it illegal to keep unsafe devices, we keep communities safer. As we conclude this debate, let us return to the fundamental principle that path safety is not merely a regulatory matter. While this bill covers PMAs and non-UL 2272 certified PMDs, it is a collective responsibility by users of all device types and all path users that will define us as a gracious society. Like Ms. Valerie Lee, my heart goes out to Madam Mala, who was hit by a PAB rider. I've met her a few times in Tampines, where she is a volunteer. But when I visited her in December at her home in Pasir Ris, she was unable to open her mouth. Since then, her husband has been updating me, and I'm heartened that she is recovering slowly but steadily, and I wish her well. Mr. Speaker, the ultimate objective of this bill is to foster a safe environment where gracious path sharing becomes second nature, where the PMA user will travel at walking speed on a crowded path and instinctively slow down to give way to other users, where residents dispose of unsafe devices rather than endanger their families and neighbors, and where all path users prioritize mutual respect over rushing to their next destination, even when no enforcement officer is present. It is these actions of the responsible majority that will keep paths safe and inclusive, and all of us can play a part. Thank you.
Acting Minister Jeffrey Siow.
Mr. Speaker, together with my colleagues at the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Home Affairs, I would like to first thank fellow members for their very thoughtful speeches on this land transport and related matters bill over the past 2 days. There were 24 speeches in total by fellow members. I confess my colleagues and I were not initially expecting this much interest in our bill. But we are humbled and appreciative because the speeches reflect how land transport is always top of mind for Singaporeans and the many stakeholders and many points of view. We have taken in members' feedback and suggestions to the best of our ability. Senior Minister of State Sim Man and Minister of State Baey Yam Keng have addressed the points raised on enforcement and on active mobility. And I will round up our debate on points related to ERP2 and other amendments covered in this bill. For other topics that are not within the scope of this bill, I would like to invite members to consider filing parliamentary questions at a future session. Let me start with the comments made by Dr. Chu Pei Ling, Ms. Valerie Lee, and Dr. Hamid Razak on the decriminalization of missed ERP payments. Indeed, most missed ERP payments are due to genuine oversight rather than an intent to avoid payment. This amendment would therefore make the penalties more proportionate to the offence. It is, in Dr. Hamid's words, a more mature regulatory approach. Dr. Chu asked whether shifting the onus for missed ERP payments to vehicle owners instead of the driver will create complications for shared vehicles. LTA has discussed these changes with fleet operators and taxi operators. Today, vehicle owners are already responsible for obligations and fees, such as road tax, so putting the responsibility of missed ERP payments on the owner would be consistent. We expect vehicle owners, such as shared fleet owners, to establish their own arrangements with the drivers to recover missed ERP payments if necessary. Dr. Chu, Ms. Tin Pei Ling, as well as Mr. Melvin Yong also asked about plans for distance-based charging. As I mentioned yesterday, I do not intend to implement distance-based charging immediately. I would like the transition to ERP2 to be as smooth as possible. So it's best to let the situation stabilize and to have motorists get used to the new system before too many parameters or new ones are introduced. Distance-based charging is still an option for the future. We have to study this further as there are many trade-offs involved, as many members have pointed out. But if we decide to implement distance-based charging, motorists will have ample notice. Our desire to have a smooth transition is also why we are keeping the broad framework for ERP charges for now. I would like to assure members that ERP rates will continue to be reviewed on a quarterly basis using ERP data, or rather ERP2 data, which will now be more accurate and reliable. The infrastructure-light nature of ERP2 does mean that we can more easily adjust locations where we can have road pricing. Therefore, we can react more quickly to mitigate traffic congestion at hotspots, including in areas where it may not be physically possible to add a ERP1 gantry today. Mr. Dennis Tan asked how we will manage ERP2 data. This is a topic we have discussed before, and we have also discussed the use of government data during the last Parliament sitting when we passed the Public Sector Governance Act. LTA adheres to all laws and government-wide standards on data sharing with other agencies, and this includes how we will manage ERP2 data. As we have said before, LTA will use vehicle-specific data only for payment, charges, and enforcement, and this will include non-payment of ERP charges and cross-border taxi enforcement. To prevent unauthorized access to the data, there are security measures and safeguards in place. For example, the design of the OBU is in line with the Federal Information Processing Standard Level 4 security standard with cryptographic security keys. Mr. Edward Chia spoke extensively on how ERP2 data can result in smarter traffic management and transport planning. My colleagues at LTA strongly agree. LTA is indeed excited by this possibility. We will use anonymized and aggregated ERP2 data for traffic management and transport planning purposes. For example, we are experimenting with merging or using this data to optimize the traffic light signal system, amongst other use cases that we are exploring. There is certainly great potential to improve traffic management using ERP2 data. As we get better at doing so, it may well be feasible to create more capacity on our roads without taking up more land. Potentially, this can allow us to have some future growth in our car population. As we move closer to completing the transition to ERP2, we are also addressing the final technical difficulties preventing some vehicles from installing OBUs. For instance, some electric vehicle models are unable to provide a constant power supply to the OBU. To overcome this, LTA has developed an external battery device to allow for the installation of OBUs for these vehicles. But where technical problems cannot be resolved, such as old cars on the classic or vintage vehicle schemes, we will exempt them from the requirement to install an OBU. Owners of such cars will then have to pay a daily flat fee if they use their vehicles on ERP operational days. Mr. Speaker, to conclude, I would like to thank members once again, especially those from the Government Parliamentary Committee on Transport, for their support and their suggestions on this bill. On safety and enforcement, this House is aligned on the need for deterrence, accountability, and proportionality. On active mobility, we want to strike the right balance to preserve the independence and dignity that personal mobility aids provide for those with genuine needs, but also to act firmly against misuse and dangerous behavior that puts others in jeopardy. This bill gives us the stronger tools to do so, and we will implement them with utmost care and consideration. Mr. Speaker, this bill covers a range of different amendments, but is united by one key principle. Mobility brings opportunity, but it must also come with responsibility. With the support of this House, this bill will allow us to keep our transportation system safe, inclusive, and ready for the future. Sir, I seek to move.
Clarifications for the Minister and the SMS and MOS? Excellent. Looks like the rounding up speeches by the three ministers are very comprehensive. Question is that the bill be now read a second time. Those who agree say aye. Aye. Those who disagree say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Land Transport and Related Matters Bill.
Committee State Short Day, Acting Minister.
Now, sir, I move that the Parliament be immediately resolve itself into a committee on the bill.
The question is that Parliament will immediately resolve itself into a committee on the bill. Those who agree say aye. Aye. Those who disagree say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is that clauses 1 to 97 stand part of the bill. Those who agree say aye. Aye. Those who disagree say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Bill to be reported. Acting Minister for Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I report that the bill has been considered in committee and agreed to without amendment.
Third reading what day?
Now, sir, I move that the bill be now read a third time.
Question is that the bill be now read a third time. Those who agree say aye. Aye. Those who disagree say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Land Transport and Related Matters Bill.